All right, I will now call to order the Wytheville Town Council meeting, Monday, September 25th, 2023 at 5 p.m. at the Municipal Building, 150 East Monroe Street, Wytheville, Virginia, 24382. We do have a quorum. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right, next would be approval of the agenda. For that, I'll need a motion, second, and a roll call vote.
So moved.
Do I have a motion to approve the agenda for this evening? Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Start with you, Mr. Gilman.
Gilman, aye.
Patterson, aye.
Taylor, aye.
Johnson,
Next, little housekeeping for council. Councilwoman Atkins requests to join our closed session later in the evening. I'll need a motion and a second.
so moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Is there any discussion? All right, hearing none, be a roll call vote. Let's start with you, Councilman Johnson.
Johnson, aye.
Taylor, aye.
Patterson, aye.
Gilman, aye.
Next on the agenda is we have a recess at 6 p.m. if so needed. Next is a consent agenda. And I need consent agenda on the minutes. I need a motion to accept as presented or somehow amended.
I move to approve the minutes of the work session and the regular meeting of September 11th.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye as well. Any opposed? That motion passes. Next is citizens period. I don't have anybody that would like to come up and address council this evening at this point. Joe said he did if it's needed. So we will move on. Next is a request of George Wythe High School to close First Street between Main and Monroe Streets and Main Street from First Street to 12th Street to conduct their homecoming parade on Wednesday, October 4th, 2023, from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. And needed, we have a presentation by, she's already up there.
Great.
Thank you, Ms. Holton.
Sure. Thank you. So I just want to say in your original packet, the date was wrong. The event organizer sent an amended application with the correct date. The correct date for the event is Wednesday, October the 4th, which is for the homecoming parade. They will start here in this parking lot and travel up Main Street over to Food City area where the parade will disembark. Brian Bard of the police department has been working with the event organizer and has notified the other members of the PD to assist with that request. And we polled the safety and events committee through email because unfortunately the application was submitted a bit late, but the members of the safety and events committee has agreed to send this to you with the recommendation that you approve the street closure request. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Questions, Sultan? Not, this requires a motion, a vote. I need a motion.
I want to make a motion that we accept the George Wythe High School homecoming parade request.
All right, have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Is there any further discussion? All right, hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye as well. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion passes. Next on the agenda is consideration of a resolution supporting the Monroe Street Traffic Calming Project Highway Safety Improvement Program, the HSIP application. And we can have a presentation by Planning Director John Woods.
All right, as you recall, at the last council work session on September the 11th, we discussed the traffic calming project for Monroe Street. There have been a number of citizens who live in that area that have complained about the speed of traffic, and we had talked last time about some particular approaches that might work. And this presentation will sort of go over what we've come up with. On your, let's see, let me get the. Laser pointer's not going to work. So what you see in this block is some of the options that we've proposed. To one, add high visibility crosswalks at all of the intersections. This example shows the 1st Street and 3rd Street, and then similar treatment would happen on each of the other blocks. Where there are existing crosswalks, they would be upgraded and replaced with the new high visibility crosswalks. In another approach that we had talked about are what are called chicanes. And if you notice in this image on the lower right, those green areas indicate some islands that would be extended out from the existing curb, basically to channel traffic into a tighter space. And as cars move through that space, they will be directed and forced to steer their car around that chicane. That tends to slow people down. And it's a proven technique. And this is the one area in this particular project where that approach is a workable solution. At this intersection shows the 7th Street intersection, and it's at this point we would use some curb bump outs, and if we can get the grading to work, potentially raising the elevation of either the crosswalk or the entire intersection. But just by narrowing that pathway with the curb bump outs, we should be able to achieve most of the perceived slowing of the traffic. In this case, there's a house there in that top right photo, just to the left edge of that photo, that currently is very close to the roadway, that actually encroaches on the sidewalk. By extending that bump out down around that, we could actually make that sidewalk passable. Right now, it's not wide enough for a wheelchair to. It would give that house a little more buffer space and allow for a full sidewalk along that path. Another thing that we want to look at is by marking out the parking spaces. People do park along this section, but by actually painting those markings on the road, that will increase the perception that that's a narrower street. As you know, Monroe Street is designed as a collector street. It's designated by VDOT as a primary street because of the connection to exit 41. But by making it that the width that it is currently, with the markings that it has currently, most people perceive that as a 35-mile-per-hour street. And typically, when you see that configuration, that's what the speed limit will be. But just by marking the signs at 25, which it is now, that's not enough to get most drivers' attention and help them know that they need to slow down. So these are the options that we're looking at. The potential for raising the intersection or the crosswalk remains, although that's a more expensive approach. And we're not sure with the drainage structures that we have if that's going to be a viable option for this particular segment, but we do want to look at that. Our proposal is to submit this through the HSIP program, which has a grant round that's currently open. I did have a conversation with some VDOT representatives today, and they think that most of what we're proposing in this would fit in. And we've learned from other VDOT representatives that some of what wouldn't fit in could be paid for with our maintenance funds. And so we're hoping to sort of combine that application to maximize between the maintenance funds and what HSIP would pay for outright to basically cover the costs of this proposal. And at this point, we're looking for an endorsement in the form of a resolution to go along with our application to VDOT. Any questions?
John, I know a lot of the neighbors on that street have voiced their opinions many times. Is there a need to go back and have another conversation with them, or?
We actually met with Mrs. Leonard this past week, and she seemed very pleased with what we're proposing.
Yeah.
The Chamberlains are out of town and weren't available to meet, but I think they'll be happy with what we've come up with as well.
John, what is the funding ratio percentage of match on HSIP?
HSIP is 100% funding. So they cover and manage that project at no cost to the town. If we do need to supplement with our maintenance funds, then we would have to coordinate that. And that would be something that we would budget through the town budget and then have reimbursement out of the maintenance money.
What's the time frame to receive funding?
The HSIP generally it's a faster turnaround than the TA funding, and their requirement is that it has to be finished in a year and a half. So we would find out if we're funded sometime early next year for the design to be presented to us later next year for construction, either late 2024 or early 25.
Is this something local forces can do, or are we going to have to contract out?
Probably this would be contracted out, particularly the HSIP funded part would definitely be contracted out. If we're doing maintenance funding, that is something that we might be able to coordinate and do in-house.
John, what would be the maintenance funding eligible? I'm assuming the parallel parking spaces would be a maintenance.
I would think so. But also it's my understanding that traffic calming measures, traffic calming devices such as that chicanes and curb bump outs would be eligible. They also may be, where we've got a crosswalk connected, they also may be eligible through HSIP. So we're going to make the application to have them do it all, and they may come back and say, no, you need to take that out, but we'll let them tell us that.
We need to come up with a temporary solution, or we just,
At this point, there's probably some we could do with striping that would be fairly quick and easy to do. I'm not overly optimistic that that's going to be as effective as the full project, of course, but there are probably some things we could do in the short term.
any other questions? Mr. Woods? All right. We have a consideration by town council to adopt the resolution. I need a motion, a second, and it'll be a roll call vote.
I move that we approve the resolution to provide an opportunity to fix a speeding problem on Monroe Street.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Here none, it'll be a roll call vote. Mr. Gilman?
Gilman, aye.
Patterson, aye.
Taylor, aye.
Johnson,
Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Woods. Next on the agenda is consideration of a resolution supporting the road diet highway safety improvement program, except application for Peppers Ferry Road. Mr. Woods?
Now, this you were presented this information at the September 11th council work session, and we're in agreement at that time. So this is now just the formal adoption of that resolution to support that project to conduct a road diet for the section of Peppers Ferry Road between 11th Street and the I-81 bridge. And that would also include some improved crosswalks in that area.
Do you have any questions for Mr. Woods? There are none. Consideration by town council to approve the resolution. We need a motion, second, and a roll call vote.
I so move.
We have a motion. We have a second.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Here are none. Roll call vote. Ms. Johnson?
Aye.
Taylor, aye.
Patterson, aye.
Gilman, aye.
Thank you, Mr. Woods. Next on the agenda would be consideration of the Ashbury Lane subdivision plat, phase 1. And we'll have Assistant Town Engineer Billy Anderson give us a little run through.
We're on your. Yeah. Okay, this is presentation from staff report for review of Asbury 1's Phase 1 subdivision. You guys originally saw, actually this application was originally submitted into the engineering department May 9th of this year, kind of begin the process. You guys end up having a review for rezoning from M1A to the current R1. And that was in March 27th of this year. Originally, the subdivision included original phase 1, or the original submittal included, I think, around 22 lots with a residual. Since then, it's been reworked to its current state right here, which was 8 lots containing existing residences, along with 3 new lots along Holston Road that'll be served by public utilities at the front. 3 variances you guys originally approved on June 12th for this regarding the proposed street width. Town subdivision ordinance requires 50 feet. The variance was requested and approved for a variance to that to allow the street right away to be 40 feet wide. That helps us with offsets for as far as setbacks from the existing structures and still keep the road in its centered up within the right of way. The variance was also requested and approved for curb and gutter. That variance was also approved in the same one. And the last one was a variance for the proposed hard surface width. The subdivision ordinance currently requires 30 feet of hard surface right now. The existing is 18 feet. And with the review and correspondence through the local VDOT resident engineer, they see no problem with having the 18 feet width as far as this style of subdivision street going into this many homes. So those were the 3 original variances you guys originally that were requested and approved. This iteration, the final phase 1, which was brought back down to the original 8 lots, and then the 3 vacant lots was submitted in August 1st. Since then, Planning Commission has went through the review of it. Town Engineering Department has went through the standard checklist as far as to make sure the plat meets all current standards required by the subdivision ordinance. Zoning, as far as the size of the lots go, all the lots that are proposed now are adequate size to allow for the existing drain fields to fall inside each lot. Like I said, the lots 9, 10, and 11 will be served from existing public sewer and public water off Holston Road. They will require like a pump up grinder system to be able to serve due to the just depends on where they position the house and the depth of the sewer out there will have to be confirmed to see if they can gravity into it, or if they can't, then they'll utilize small pump ups to get to the public utility. The staff reports you guys had in your packet, all the criteria as far as the plat presentation have met regarding being technically adequate. What they show is the proposed lots, the residual, where the proposed water line will be installed. The subdivision will require some water line improvement. It will require some road right of way and road surface improvement in order to meet some of the VDOT and town standards as far as public utility provisions. Let's see here. Currently, right now, the developer is working with licensed engineer to develop the civil side that will basically accompany this subdivision plat prior to approval. We had a progress meeting last week. The local VDOT resident engineer met with myself, Joe Frazee, Shannon Rogers, and I believe it was Mark Williams and James Schwartz from VDOT met us out there to go over to see where the progress is as far as how if VDOT's comments on the submittal, because they're also reviewing this along with me as far as road standards to make sure that this will be available for submittal on a U1 form to be brought into the state maintenance system, basically be able to be received maintenance funding on. Phase 1, being that we've reduced down to focusing on just the 8 houses that are there and minimal development. Right now through DEQ has basically described to us that right now no stormwater would really be necessary to be addressed at this time. If the remaining property is developed, and the rest of the lots are fleshed out in the back and additional infrastructure is installed, then the remaining portion of the site will require state coverage, permit coverage for stormwater management. But at this iteration, through Kelly Miller, the representative from DEQ, this will not require any site work right now that'll directly pertain to stormwater management on this property or on this portion of the development. There is proposed 40-foot dedication all the way from Holston Road to the end right there, just past. There's a little small turnaround that's being proposed that VDOT will require. That's in front of Lot 8. Majority of the right of way, well, say probably half and half. Half will come from Fusion Holding, and the other half will be dedicated by the facility managers that run the Carrington nursing home right now. And so we shouldn't have any problem. They basically have prelim plats ready for dedications as far as dedicating the right of way that will be a part of this subdivision plat. So upon, I guess, final approval and recordation of this plat, the town would require the full 40 feet right of way width, along with posted 15-foot public utility easements that would line the entire side, both sides of the right of way, and an additional street drainage easement that allows the town to basically collect water off the street and discharge it down to an adequate channel. So these will be a couple minor easements that would be required as far as the right of way and the utility easements that are shown on the plat. There is like proposals potentially for later on for future development, but again, this is in order to prevent having to deal with DEQ right now as far as permit coverage. They opted just to drop back and utilize and try to redevelop this portion here to get these existing 8 houses on the market ready to go. Some of the site improvements that will be required either prior to approval or after posting of surety bond to be completed would be VDOT requires a road realignment right at the intersection of Holston Road and Asbury Lane. They're requesting this because currently right now there's a trustees of the Wytheville Holston Methodist Church owns the little lot that's on the left-hand side as soon as you go into Asbury. That's a separate ownership that's not tied to either the nursing home or Fusion Holding. Of course, we can't adjust any property lines that aren't portion of the party, so they requested basically to shift that over so that the full 18 feet of hard service can be basically installed and maintained within the proposed 4-foot right of way. Right now, the property line for that little church sticks out into the existing paved surface about 2 feet. That's why they basically have requested to shift it over to basically get that street right of way and the street hard surface out of any private piece of property. They've requested some street drainage structures to be replaced due to either age or the condition. There'll be, I believe there's potentially 3 existing storm structure pipes that will be replaced, along with a couple of storm structures that will be proposed to be installed on the right of ways to allow town forces to basically to adequately maintain those structures. There will be a replacement of a sanitary sewer line, which is a drain line that goes from Lot 8 to the drain field that's over in the residual property. The developer is going to replace that existing 4-inch sanitary sewer line with a new line and install 2 cleanouts on either side. So that portion of that septic system will become the town's. The reason being for that is because the Department of Transportation does not allow private easements across public property. So they would only allow it if the town assumed responsibility for that portion of the sanitary sewer system for that lot number 8. So the town would keep that section clean between right of way. The remaining portions of the septic system for Lot 8 would be the responsibility of the new owners of Lot 8, whoever purchased it. The same thing goes with just to the southwest of the facility. There is currently about a 24-inch drain pipe. It serves as basically storm drainage collection and discharge for the nursing facility. That section would also be replaced, along with the installation of an access point, basically a manhole in that line, and the town would assume responsibility of that portion of the line and keep that drain line clean, again, to keep from having a private easement across a public street. Department of Transportation also requires the turnaround to be posted at the end, basically to allow not that they can either opt for a T-handle, a hammer turnaround, or a cul-de-sac. And this is probably the quickest and the most economical and best way to provide a turnaround that would be at the end of this proposed phase. This will also be probably the easiest way to, in the future, if parcel A is ever further developed, this portion of the right of way would be probably the least intrusive and be the easiest to basically adjust that lot line to get rid of it in the future if this road were extended on out. The town council did that one time with Deerfield. Deerfield Phase 1 had a turnaround, had a cul-de-sac that was proposed. And when the Phase 2 was brought in, basically that cul-de-sac right away was abandoned and consumed within one of the new proposed lots of Phase 2. That's similar to this. That's only a minor incursion into the remaining residual parcel A, so that if additional development was installed later on, it would be an easy way to abandon that little small turnaround, or actually allow the developer to utilize that turnaround as potentially a driveway and just revert back to a straight 40-foot right of way. Those are the primary requests that VDOT is working with the civil engineer to basically remedy. After all these improvements were made, the final thing would be to basically provide a final surface coat on the existing road to take care of any utility cuts that'll happen when they reinstall all the water line and the laterals and the storm line, basically to provide a clean surface for the road to have to make it look like a new street. That's basically what VDOT is requesting and working with the designer. The town, so the only thing right now we are requesting is currently the facility at Carrington and these 8 houses are served off of 1 4-inch meter. That's what the original design plan shows. That's what we believe to be somewhat accurate. Right now, in order to get these 8 houses, basically the new 6-inch water line will have to be constructed, or bonded, which basically the engineering department has discussed with the designer and the developers about installing a portion of it down to just probably right there adjacent to Carrington, and basically separating Carrington's water system from this future water system to where they can get tied into the existing. From that point on, they can bond the rest of the water line. That kind of gets them ahead of the game a little bit as far as getting these existing 8 houses. Shannon Rogers, the same thing. The engineer is working on a water line design that would basically increase the water line size from a 4-inch to a 6-inch all the way down through there. There's the installation of additional some fire suppression down there. I think there's 1 additional fire hydrant, along with one at the very end. It includes any valve work that needs to be done, a new connection to the 12-inch line that's on Holston Road that would separate this section of water line from what Carrington's currently using. It would also correct what we believe to be is a leak that's basically funneling into the first storm culvert that crosses from Carrington down to that first discharge point. There's a water line. There's water leaking into that structure that when we had tested, it was town water. So the reinstallation and replacement of that 4-inch line would correct a water leak issue down through there. And basically, discussions with fire department and EMS, and as far as the 6-inch water line would be what they would request, and what basically Virginia Department of Health would require to be able to serve that area. would be the currently right now the only recommendation that the engineering department has as far as a request for replacement. Trevor Hackler, town engineer, has issued a letter to Fusion Holdings indicating this request, and the reason why this request is, again, currently we don't necessarily know where the water line is or what it's made out of or the condition of it, other than it's tied into the Carrington facility and there's a leak on it somewhere. So that's why we basically made the request to have it replaced. Let's see. You guys have any questions right now while I review the rest of this here?
Mr. Anderson, consideration of the Ashbury Lane subdivision plat phase 1 is a recommendation from the planning commission.
Correct. Yes, it has been recommended.
Sure that's understood.
Yes. At the last planning commission meeting, there was a recommendation to approve it contingent on the preparation of an approved set of civil site plans that would accompany this along with the subdivision agreement, basically ensuring the installation of the required improvements that the town and VDOT are requiring.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Anderson? All right, so we're going to need a motion and a second, a roll call vote.
Well, since all recommendations have been met, and I'm talking about the planning commission recommendation and your staff report recommendation, I move that we approve phase 1 of the Asbury Lane subdivision.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? This as well will be a roll call vote. Mr. Gilman?
Gilman, aye.
Patterson, aye.
Taylor, aye.
Johnson, aye.
All right, so that motion carries. Thank you very much. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Next is the-
I was just going to say, good job, Helen. Good job.
All right, next is a consideration of a resolution recognizing town volunteers who serve on committees, boards, and authorities. And we'll have a presentation by Town Clerk Sherry Gordon.
So what you have before you is a resolution that would recognize all of the town volunteers that serve on the town committees, boards, authorities, commissions. As you'll recall, earlier in the year, you did adopt a resolution that recognized the volunteers who serve within the various town departments. But this resolution would recognize people that actually serve on the town committees.
Do you have any questions for Ms. Gordon?
Elaine, we were going to try to get a head count for the appreciation event. How's that going?
I believe Sherry's going to give.
All right, good. Thank you, Sherry.
Now. we have, they're coming in slow, but we have about 25 people that have RSVP so far.
Thank you, Ms. Gordon.
You're welcome.
All right, anything else? If not, we'll need a motion and a second.
So moved.
A motion, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Consider the resolution recognizing the town volunteers who serve on committees, boards, and authorities. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye as well. Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you for doing that. Next is to amend the fiscal year 2023-24 budget to appropriate $10,500 for the HVAC system at the Heritage Presentation Center. I believe Town Manager Mr. Freeman will Let's vote out on that.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. At the last meeting, I reported to you all that the HVAC system at the Heritage Preservation Center had failed. It is a 21-year-old system that had just had a blower replacement, and now the compressor has failed. And the town must have replaced several of these in about the same time frame because we had a nearly identical situation at the police department last year. So the cost to replace this system is $9,925. We're asking that you amend and appropriate the 2023-24 budget for $10,500 just to handle any contingencies that may arise during the installation. But we certainly would only use the additional contingency if an unforeseen circumstance should arise.
Questions for Mr. Freeman?
New River Heating and Air, they are the ones who will be taking care of this. Are there any other,
Like quotes or
Quotes,
yeah.
yeah.
To my knowledge, this is the only quote that the museums department has obtained. It's well under the procurement limit, and this is who they've had the best results on so far. This is who they've had the best working relationship with, so that's where they prefer to go with it. The limit for construction is $200,000 before going to like a bid or something like that. But this is the only quote that I have received.
was it offered to anyone else other than them?
I would have to ask that question. I
you
don't
please find
believe
out?
so.
Any further questions? So for the consideration of downtown council to amend the fiscal year 2023 budget to appropriate $10,500 for the HVAC system, we will need a motion and a second and a roll call vote.
I move that we amend the fiscal year 2023-24 budget to appropriate $10,500 for the HVAC system at the Preservation Center.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Right, hearing none. This is a roll call vote. Ms. Johnson?
Uh,
Taylor, aye.
Patterson, aye.
Gilman, aye.
So that motion passes. Next on the agenda is new business, Town Manager Brian Freeman.
Mayor Taylor, just a couple of things I want to touch on here very briefly. You will see, my intent is to bring to you a budget amendment proposal in our next meeting regarding the additional street maintenance funding we're getting from VDOT. VDOT has increased the street maintenance payments such that we're anticipating about $692,000 in additional street maintenance funds this year. These are there's a narrowly defined purposes that these can be used for. They are considered, they're basically aid from the state. They're considered grants to maintain our streets. But we did not program this money in our budget because the state was still considering the funding formula, and we did not want to assume that they would approve the funds. But the maintenance payments are coming in and do reflect an additional $692,000. So I'll be working with the Public Works Director and the Town Treasurer in the coming weeks to develop a budget amendment on how to amend the budget and program those funds for usage. So just wanted to let you know that. Just a real quick reminder of the upcoming meetings, and I'm sure Ms. Corbin will touch on this later, but I just wanted to go ahead and reiterate that the regular meeting for October 9th was that you all did cancel that due to a conflict with the VML conference. And then there was a special called meeting on Wednesday, October 11th at 4 p.m. for a public hearing regarding the issuance of a bond for the dehumidification unit and the garbage trucks. I just wanted to remind everyone of that. That's all I have for now.
Thank you, sir. Upcoming meetings, Town Clerk Sherry Court, please.
How about it's still yours?
Okay, so the Joint Industrial Development Authority will meet on Thursday, September 28th at 3 p.m. here in the council chambers. The town of Wytheville municipal offices will be closed and all services curtailed on Monday, October 9th due to the Columbus Day holiday. The Wytheville Town Council meeting scheduled for Tuesday, October the 10th has been canceled, but there will be a special town council meeting held on Wednesday, October 11th at 4 p.m. here in the council chambers. And the Wytheville Recreation Commission will meet on Wednesday, October the 11th at 5:30 p.m. at the community center. And that's all.
Any questions for Ms. Morgan? All right, moving on to other business. Update regarding the Pepperidge Ferry Road Sidewalk ADA upgrade project. And Mr. Woods, would you?
If you'll recall, I guess it was about a month ago that this body approved a resolution in support of that particular project. And as we have evaluated the cost estimate and the nature of the project, as well as some commentary that we've received from VDOT, we feel that it would be more efficient if we address those repairs to the sidewalk ramps and driveway entrances through the maintenance funding, since that has been increased, and rather than going through the process of the Transportation Alternatives Grant Program. We feel that we can get the work done faster and probably at a comparable cost as to what would have been our portion of the match for the federal funding, since that federal funding increases the procedures that a contractor has to go through and requires some extra steps that tend to inflate the overall cost. We think it would be best used of our funds to do it with the maintenance funding rather than going through that process. And I wanted to make sure that council was aware of that change. Give them the opportunity to comment if you.
Any questions for Mr. Woods?
So you are saying that you would rather use the town maintenance funds versus receiving a grant?
We feel that in talking with the people who will be reviewing this, they expressed some skepticism as to its eligibility, which gave us some concern. But also, we feel that by using town forces and the maintenance funds, that we can actually do it for cheaper, similar to the Trust Bridge Park project a couple years ago, in which we had money left over from the project to repair the bridge, but it turned out that we were able to contract the remaining work separately for less than the actual money that we would have had to spend by using the TA program, because it requires us to go through some extra processes that just make the cost more.
Yeah, so just to kind of piggyback on that, so this funding would be an 80-20. We would have to provide the 20% match. Just by, for example, if you're looking at $1 million project, that would be $200,000 in match. A lot of the costs that are tied up in that are meeting the federal regulations, the data stake and labor compliance issues. You have to hire a third party to monitor all that and interview those people. They have to do certified payrolls, have to be stamped and sealed engineering drawings, and all those things that are, you don't need stamped and sealed engineering drawings to replace a sidewalk in kind. So you end up tying up just tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in administrative and design costs, and just the inflation that comes with it being federally funded and having federal regulations tied to it. So you end up putting a lot of the money into things that aren't, bricks and mortar, for example. That's the challenge. And This HSIP, not HSIP, the TA funding takes a lot longer to get approved, takes a lot longer for them to allocate the funds. So you're probably looking at starting a project in 2 years that you could be done with. That's all that kind of weighs in there. And if you wait around for the next 2 years to figure out if you're going to get the money only to get denied, then you've just wasted the time. And
Are the extra finances, were they included in the budget?
$692,000.
The extra money that he is talking about that we did not use,
I
is that
don't,
included in? the budget?
that's a good question, but I don't think so.
Now, the money that I was talking about regarding Trust Bridge Park, that account has been closed
I think
out.
what you're asking is it's a 20% match that we would have had to put toward this included budget. I will have to go back and look, and that's a good question, but I don't right off the top.
I don't believe it's in the current budget because it hasn't been funded. It hasn't been approved through VDOT yet.
We wouldn't have encumbered any cost in the 23-24 budget because we probably won't even know if it's approved until
It'll be next summer about when we find
You'll
out.
be budgeting for it next time.
And one of the things that caused us to, reconsider this was finding out that we were receiving more maintenance funds, which, it expands our ability of, and so it is VDOT money that we're talking about. It's just something
Different
that's
mechanism.
different mechanism.
But that was not in our budget. I think is
No,
where she was
because
going
you
from.
won't know.
I understand it. I
Yeah.
just want to make sure everybody on that.
So, but it's included in the 692,000.
Well, not yet. So we're going to work. Chris Peoples, Director of Public Works Peoples, Treasurer, and I will get together and put that budget together and hopefully have that to you all in a month for an official, our next regular.
So it's not going to cost us extra money.
No. So the VDOT maintenance money that we get about right now we're getting about 2.8 million, and this will come out to 3.492. That's correct. So it comes out to 692,000 more. So the money's already coming. They already send you the money, and then you send them back the report and say how you spend it.
Okay.
So it's one of those.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. I appreciate you.
So we do not need a vote on this, correct?
It's just an FYI.
Yeah. Moving forward, our review of the proposed rehabilitation zone program to the Assistant Town Manager Holton.
Would you want to do this now, or would you rather wait till after closed session?
Sounds like you think it'll take longer than 6
I think it
o'clock.
will. I mean, I don't mind getting started, but it's your preference.
I think we probably should wait in the closed session if we have that at 6 o'clock straight up.
Is correct.
That's correct.
So we will continue our meeting in a closed session. And then we will come back out and finish this agenda.
Do we need a motion to do that?
We do. So a motion is needed. Go into closed meeting to discuss pursuant to 2.2-3711A1, interview with candidate for town attorney position. This requires a motion and vote.
Also move that we go into closed session.
Do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Favor signify by saying aye. Aye as well. Any opposed? That motion passes, so we will now go into closed session. Finish the rest of the agenda when we come out. to reconvene into open session by stating that the town council is now in open session. A motion is necessary to certify that only matters lawfully convening to the open session were discussed. I need a motion and a second.
I move we can go back into open session.
So I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Is there any discussion? I hear none. Roll call vote. Mr. Gilman?
Aye.
Edison, aye.
Aye.
Johnson.
We are now in open session.
Mayor Taylor, would you like for me to resume
Please.
on the agenda? Okay, great. Thank you, everyone, for your time this evening. First of all, I just want to apologize that you are just now getting the handout for my presentation. I was waiting on a response from some different entities, and it took longer than I thought. But the good news is you're not going to be asked to make any decisions tonight. The goal for tonight is just to propose this concept and give you some time to think about it. I also plan on, after tonight, reaching out to each council member individually and spending some time one-on-one with you, talking through the details of what this program can look like. And then we'll come back together in about a month, and potentially, if you're ready at that time, that's when we would do a consideration of this item. So let me get started. The conversation for tonight is a presentation on housing revitalization zones. And just to give you some background information of why I'm bringing this to you, as many of you recall, we've been grappling with the issue of affordable housing for quite some time now. And I put together some statistics here to just sort of bring it down to the level that we can understand about the town of Wytheville here. Essentially, we all know this. We are in an affordable housing crisis. The crisis affects all demographics and age groups. We have a lack of affordable move-in ready homes. So if you go like on Trello, you'll notice there's a very low inventory of homes that are under $300,000. The monthly mortgage for a $300,000 home is $2,200 a month. And by comparison, the mortgage for a $200,000 home is $1,468. That is really essentially the difference between someone being able to purchase a home in this market and somebody not. Most of the people, most of our friends and neighbors in this community do not make enough to buy a $300,000 home. So black and white, that's sort of the issue we're dealing with. Affordable monthly rental rates for workforce housing, Virginia is in the $650 to $800 a month range. And as we all know, this range is hard to find. Households are considered cost burdened. This is a term you will often hear when they spend more than 30% of their income on rent, mortgage, and other housing needs. And just an example at the bottom of the slide, if a person's making $30,000 a year, then the monthly take-home pay after taxes is $1,946. If they were to pay an $800 rent, that's 41% of their monthly income. So when we look at the U.S. Census Bureau statistics, the median household income in the town of Wytheville is $41,074 a year. The per capita income is $29,629 a year, and the persons in poverty in the town of Wytheville is 25%. Again, this adds to our affordable housing crisis. As you all recall, Mount Rogers PDC sponsored a housing study for Wythe County, and these are just some quotes that I took out to further bring this issue home. Wythe County had approximately 90 fewer housing units in 2020 compared to 2010. So we are also having a supply issue just from the fact that units are deteriorating. Some structures have been demolished, and the new housing stock is not keeping up with the ones that are going away. Affordable, this is another quote, affordable apartment units, and they were referencing the Redevelopment Housing Authority. They target both low and moderate income households. The majority of these units serve households earning less than 30% of the area median income. And these properties are at full occupancy and maintain wait lists. So as we know, the authority does a great job. We have, I think, over 9 different facilities across town that are doing a great job serving the needs of our population. But most of those people are in the 30% AMI. And we really just don't have a lot for the folks that are typically the workforce housing range, which would be in the 80% AMI region. Again, from the housing study, from the data that they collected, most prospective home buyers can only afford homes in the $175,000 to $250,000 range. And then lastly, this bullet is really the takeaway as to why I'm bringing this rehabilitation zone idea to you tonight. The housing study recommended that to pursue the development of both general occupancy and age-restricted affordable apartment units through the low-income housing tax credit program. And they go on to say that at this time, it is unlikely that affordable apartment units will be developed outside of the low-income housing tax credit framework in Wythe County. And essentially, I'm going to get to why that's related in my presentation. So in the Code of Virginia, we don't have a lot of tools as a locality to spur housing, but one of them is this idea of the housing rehabilitation zone. And if you go to this code section, you will notice that it does directly enable localities to create housing rehab zones. We would create that by an ordinance. We would also have a map of the properties in the town of Wytheville that we would be considered as our rehab zone. And so essentially the 3 ways that we are going to promote the development of housing by using these tools is this gives us the ability to provide local incentives, such as the waiving of permit and user fees. If we choose, we can also waive tax liens, we can use regulatory flexibility, and we can establish special service districts to improve public infrastructure. The second way is the housing project located in the town of Wytheville Rehabilitation Zone will give a project 15 extra points on a low-income housing tax credit application. And throughout the week, I've been calling various entities just to better understand that low-income housing tax credit program. The ability to get 15 points on that application could be the difference between a developer getting that federal tax credit and them not. And so it would make sense for us to put this tool in place so that if we have a developer located in our rehab zone, they could gain those extra points on their application. And then the third bullet there, the designation in the zone establishes the project as committed to workforce housing, and it establishes a partnership with the town, and it also enables access to other state programs such as pre-development loans. So Virginia Housing has a sort of a catalog of programs, and by us having properties in this rehabilitation zone, it enables access to some of these additional programs. Okay, so this is an example of James City County. They have this map in their comprehensive plan, and this is just an example of what, if we were to do a map, obviously it would be the town of Wytheville, not James City County, but it wouldn't be a contiguous geographic area. It would be based on applicants and specific tax map parcel numbers. So I really just showed that as an example of what a zone could look like. Again, the positive relationship of rehabilitation zone properties to Virginia housing. The 15 points on the low-income housing tax credit is, for me, one of the primary reasons to do this. The access to Virginia housing pre-development loan program, and what this does is it provides low-interest financing, which is equally important in today's credit situation. It will provide access to the Virginia Housing Stabilization or Deconstruction Grant as part of their Community Impact Grant program. And it solidifies the project as locally vetted and can help them with other applications. So just a little bit more about the low-income housing tax credit program. This is administered by Virginia Housing, but it is a federal program sponsored by the U.S. Treasury Department. It encourages the development of affordable rental housing by providing a federal income tax credit based on the investment. And it provides incentives for private investors to participate in the construction and rehabilitation of housing for low-income families and workforce housing. In return for setting aside a percentage of units for low-income and workforce tenants, the developer receives federal tax credits, which helps to offset the cost of construction. And so you can see where trying to incentivize a local developer to build affordable units right now is next to impossible, just because by the time they calculate the cost of construction, the developer could not afford to have low rents. But this program enables them to provide the rents that we need for the workforce in Wytheville. Another thing to know about the low-income housing tax credit program is it's a very competitive program. So I put in a phone call today to a developer that we know who has been looking at Wytheville for packaging programs like this. And he said that essentially, getting 15 extra points could be the difference between a developer choosing to come here and build affordable housing and not. So for us, one of the exciting things is that we can put together a local incentive package. If you remember from the Build It 2025 program, we weren't enabled through that program to provide direct incentives to developers. So we had to transfer the funds to the EDA, who actually administered those funds on our behalf. But what is really great about this enabling authority is we can directly do a waiver of the fees. And so we wouldn't have the burden of doing the reimbursement process. We would just say, there's no fee for you because you're in a rehabilitation zone. We can also waive the water and sewer fees. I like the idea of the zone in that once we have the established properties, I'm hoping that local staff could work sort of hand in hand with the developer to make sure that they are successful. So in essence, it just builds this partnership. They're going to be faced with a lot of hurdles in building this workforce housing, and having that ability to work directly with them is something that excites me. We can also consider other local incentives at the town council's discretion. So on the right-hand side of the slide, these are some of the things that we could consider. Again, we don't have to do those right at the beginning of the program, but over the program's life, these are some other tools in our toolbox if we decide to pursue them. So I just took a stab at some draft selection criteria. I highlighted draft because I didn't want anybody to think this is any sort of final form. What I see happening, if you all agree to move forward with this, is we would set up an internal application process where we would do a request for proposal to let the community know that they can apply to be in this rehabilitation zone. And then we would have a set of criteria that the selection committee would use to evaluate these applications. So these are some of the items that I thought may be helpful. Some of those things are pretty commonplace, but essentially the way I see the program working is that we would consider both new structures and rehabilitated structures. I mean, why not? Let's consider it all. We would consider both single family and multiple housing units, and we would also consider home ownership and rental units. So if they're doing an affordable housing unit, we're going to consider them for the program. Access to public water or sewer is something we probably want to consider with our selection. Also, the ability to be zoned appropriately. We need to probably see that they have the ability to complete the project. So prior experience with similar projects might be useful to know. All of the projects should have a income threshold that we would ask that they strive to meet. Again, just so that we are incentivizing workforce and low-income housing. From my perspective, I don't know that somebody who's wanting to build a $500,000 home in the town of Wytheville would probably be applicable to this program. Yes, we need that type of housing, but the need for workforce housing is much greater. So those things you can just take a look at in your spare time. I'm not going to go through all of them, and we'll continue to refine that between now and the next time you see a presentation. So I gave some thought about what a selection committee could look like. I'm recommended a 5-person committee, 1 member from your body, if you choose to do that, 1 member from the Planning Commission, 1 member from the town EDA, and potentially 2 members of town staff to review the applications. And then at the bottom is just a general statement. I think we should vet these committee members to just make sure that they're not in a position where either themselves or their family could potentially be involved in a project. So, for example, we would probably want to stay away from anybody that's involved in either the real estate or the construction industry, and just make sure that we're real careful about that selection committee. I just took a stab at a draft RFP. So this is a sample of what we could release in the paper and social media and on the town website to let individuals know that we are looking for interested individuals. And then here's just a potential timeline for you. I know we have a lot on our plate right now, and I feel kind of bad about bringing this to you at this point in time with as much as we have going on. But here's the reality of low-income housing tax credits. The application will open up in March. So if we're going to enable anybody to take advantage of that application cycle, we need to start talking about this now and sort of make a decision whether or not we want to use this tool. If you're not comfortable with it at this time, we can always postpone and we can kick this can further down the road. But if we were going to try to meet that March deadline, this is a draft timeline here. I will bring this back to you all on October the 23rd. And between now and then, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those. And again, I would also like to schedule some one-on-ones to get your ideas on the program. So just a quick summary. We want to make this equitable so everybody knows about the program. There's no limit to the amount of properties that we can consider. So the way I see the program unfolding is we do a 2024 selection of the rehab zone properties, and then potentially receive rolling applications, and then maybe once a year we'll just kind of consider a batch of these properties at a time depending on what comes in. But over time there is no real limit to the amount of properties that would be in the rehab zone. The only requirement would be that they would have to have a commitment to affordable housing. So does anybody have any questions for tonight?
All right, who establishes the rehab zones? This 5-panel?
So, as the town council, you can establish that yourselves if you choose. My recommendation would be that we set up a subcommittee to vet those for you and then bring them. Ultimately, you would have the decision, but I thought it might be fitting to have a subcommittee that would do the sort of the nuts and bolts of the review and then bring you the recommendation.
I don't know. I think I want to ask you, would it require any special zoning or special permits by the Planning Commission?
It would just depend. As you know, we are rewriting the UDO, and if it's a multifamily housing unit, it may not be allowed in all of our zone districts. So it would just be very site specific as to where they were locating.
We know that Hope or Open Door is proposing housing out next to Food City. Is this a program fitted for their need?
Absolutely. This would assist anybody such as Open Door who is doing workforce or low-income housing with obtaining additional points on the low-income housing tax credit application. So, and from what I understand, Open Door is interested in applying for the low-income housing tax credit program.
Well, what little bit, I think it's a win-win for, for all parties. I like your concept. There's just a couple little things I'm not sure about, so I will talk to you one-on-one.
Okay.
But no, I like the concept. And we are talking about rentals. We're talking about new construction and old that needs to be rehabbed. Those three, that's what we're,
Correct.
Okay.
All types of housing unit. We just have to set what we think the income thresholds would be. Right now, the recommendation because I've been speaking with Virginia Housing and some other folks about this project, and right now the recommendation is that we shoot for an 80% AMI threshold, which essentially would put people your average median income of 75,000 ish, which is what they consider 80% AMI for our part of Virginia. Your rental rates, your threshold would be somewhere in the $1,000 a month. That would be your threshold for that. And we're working out some of those details, which is why I didn't put them in your slides. But at the next meeting, we'll have those direct rental rates and also what types of homes, what level of homes we're thinking about for the threshold to be considered affordable housing.
So you said $75,000. Is that annual income for a family?
So that's the HUD limits. It's all better. It's kind of complex because you're dealing with some HUD language and Virginia housing language. But for Wytheville County, which is the region that we are in, the median income that they use, their average is 75,000. And so they base all of their HUD limits on that threshold, on 75,000.
So on 75,000, is that an individual income, a family income? What is that? What income is that 75,000 based on?
So it is a family of four.
Family of four.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be, you say a family of four, 2 adults, children, 2 or 4 adults.
Potentially, and Virginia Housing and HUD sets that standard for Wytheville County. That's why I would prefer to use a standard that's already existing in the world, because they also administer all the other state programs. So if you stay in line with what their thresholds are, you also position the developer to take advantage of their other programs.
I think it's a good idea. It would certainly be beneficial to our community. We don't have housing, and housing is hard to come by right now. So I think it could be beneficial. But there are some things I'll obviously sit down with you and discuss.
Certainly.
It's exciting that we're having this dialogue.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. All right, next on the agenda is notifications of vacancies and upcoming vacancies on town committees or boards, and we'll turn it over to Town Clerk Sherry Corbin.
Okay, so what you have before you is a listing of all of the vacancies on the town committees and boards through the end of 2023. So right now, we currently have vacancies on the Building Code Appeals Board. We have 1, and the Wytheville Tree Committee. And then later on in the year, you'll see that we will have vacancies on the Joint Industrial Development Authority, the Recreation Commission, and the Wytheville Economic Development Authority. So if you know of anybody that would like to apply for these, please let me know, and we'll be glad to assist them through the OpenGov portal to apply.
Thank you. Update regarding the volunteer appreciation event. I might have already covered that, but hand it back over to Ms. Corbin.
Okay. Well, as we discussed earlier, we do have our volunteer appreciation event scheduled for Tuesday, October 24th from 6 to 7:30 p.m. at the Wytheville Meeting Center. The RSVPs have been coming through rather slow. We have about 25 people that have signed up so far, but hopefully they've got till October the 2nd, the second set of invitees to reply. So anyway, hopefully we'll get more people. And if any member of council would like to attend and you haven't RSVP'd, please let us know so we can put you down.
Thank you. We move forward to council member time. And start with Mr. Yeoman. Anything?
Ma'am, I don't.
Nothing?
Mr. Freeman, is there any updates on the 20th Street closure?
No. Well, let me just say that we did meet with, last Friday, I was able to meet with the property owner that had offered to use his land. I was able to meet with him, with Lieutenant Kenny Akers, Fire and EMS Chief Slim, and Public Works Director Peoples to ride across that, take a look at it, see what's within the realm of possibility. The existing road bed is in pretty rough shape and it's pretty steep, but it's passable, and they know how to get through the gate and get over there if they need to now. It's just that certain vehicles would have a lot of trouble with it, and possibly would have trouble with it even with some grading and some additional stone or milling material. But we also went over and looked at the Madison Street side. Currently, one of the property owners that's adjacent to 14th Street is using some Madison Street access that is kind of creating a road over there. We're going to talk to that's not necessarily on his property. This is very vague, I understand, and I don't mean it to be, but there's also a passable path that way. And in an emergency situation, our personnel has the authority to enter private property to get to, say, a patient or to remedy an emergency situation. So they've all seen it. They know it's there. They know there's two different routes that they can choose to get over there. But we're also going to look at a little more focused now, the possibility of just getting Madison Street in, even though it wouldn't be a VDOT approved street, just going ahead and getting it opened up, even if it's gated. Don't necessarily want the public going across it, but we're going to try to see what it would take to get Madison Street open and passable. So that's the main update on that.
Thank you. That's all we got.
I don't have anything right now. Johnson?
I do. North 22nd Street. Is there any way we can look into putting in some curb and gutter? Looks like the water washes down off of the hill from Pine Street, and it goes into some of the residents' yards. It looks like where it appears to be a way for it to drain, but it's not draining. It's flooding their yards out. So can we look into getting curb and gutter put over there? Looking at the pictures that they sent, it's not. I wouldn't want it to be my yard.
We'll take a look.
So if you all would look into that, it's around about, I guess, 520 North 22nd Street. And at the top of that is Pine Street. So that water, as it's coming down when it rains, it goes down. Yeah. I think that on the other side of them would be, I guess, it's the Homestead Fuel Company, maybe. I'm not sure if that's correct, the correct name. It used to be owned, I think, by Pendleton. So if we could get that taken care of, I would greatly appreciate it. That's all I have. I needed to make sure I took care of that message.
Very good. All right, so next on the agenda, basically is only council committee reports. So instead of asking council members if they have anything to report, I think I would ask all of us to maybe consider, and we all have these committees that we're on, and we all go to our committees. They may not happen every month and maybe every quarter. I think if everybody can come prepared after their, start with the next meeting, to give a few little tidbits to the rest of us as to what. I mean, there's a reason why we've been, it's been going on for decades, why we're on these committees. So it'd be helpful to the rest of the town council to know what's going on and if there's anything that we need to help address or anything. So if anybody has anything they want to say now as far as their committee reports, but that's what I would just ask is to be prudent about doing it and give a little bit of a update of your committee to during council time. Questions? Anything else to come before council this evening? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you all very